Not everyone plays by the rules of those who make them. When my boss vanished, leaving me in control of $3 million in contracts, I kept silent, so silent the entire company never knew. But in a world where power is bought with blind loyalty, silence can be the sharpest blade, and I knew exactly when to draw it. They thought they'd buried me with a pink slip and empty promises. They had no idea they'd just armed me with everything I needed to bring their glass tower crashing down. My name is Elena Grant, and I should have seen it coming the moment Marcus Hale's assistant called me at 8:30 that morning. "Mr. Hale would like to see you in his office," she'd said, her voice carrying that particular tone reserved for delivering bad news wrapped in corporate politeness. The memorial service for Victoria Cross had been just 3 days ago. 3 days since we'd stood in that suffocating conference room, listening to hollow tributes from men who'd barely acknowledged her existence when she was alive. Now they praised her collaborative spirit and dedication to the team, the same men who'd talked over her in meetings and claimed her ideas as their own. I knocked on Marcus's door at exactly 9 o'clock. Punctuality had always been my armor in this place, one of many shields I'd learned to carry. "Elena, come in. Please, sit." Marcus didn't look up from his laptop, his fingers still dancing across the keyboard as I settled into the leather chair across from his mahogany desk. The office still smelled like Victoria's jasmine perfume, a ghost of her presence that Marcus's aggressive cologne couldn't quite erase. He finally closed his laptop with a deliberate click, folding his hands in that practiced way they must teach in executive coaching seminars. "I'll cut straight to the point. Northbridge is restructuring. We need to streamline operations, especially in light of recent changes." Recent changes, that's what they were calling Victoria's death now. "I understand you've been handling some of Victoria's accounts during her illness," he continued, the pause before illness hanging in the air like a confession. "I'll need you to compile a complete transfer document, everything, client contacts, contract details, correspondence histories, the works." I kept my face neutral, a skill I'd perfected over 7 years of watching less qualified men leapfrog over me on the corporate ladder. "Of course. When would you need this by?" "End of day today." He leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. "We're bringing in some fresh talent to manage these relationships, people with the right profile for our premium clients." The right profile. I knew exactly what that meant. I'd seen the 3 new hires last week, all men, all with the same country club swagger and Ivy League connections that Marcus valued more than actual performance metrics. "I see." I shifted slightly, feeling the weight of the folder in my bag, the one containing signed authorization forms that Marcus knew nothing about. "And my role moving forward?" He had the audacity to attempt a sympathetic smile. "Elena, you've been invaluable during this transition. Really, top-notch support work. But I'm afraid we're eliminating your position. HR has prepared a severance package 2 weeks, plus accumulated PTO. Very generous, considering what? That I'd generated 40% more revenue than any of his golf buddies, that I'd saved the Morrison account when their previous manager nearly torpedoed a $2 million renewal, that Victoria had trusted me, and only me, with her most important clients." "The premium accounts," I said carefully, watching his eyes. "The Steinberg Group, Morrison Industries, the Catalyst Fund. You'll want those handled delicately. They have very specific expectations." His eyes lit up with barely concealed greed. "Exactly why we need someone with the right presence representing us. But don't worry about the details. Just get me that transfer document." "There might be some complications," I said, pulling the folder from my bag with practiced calm. "Victoria made some changes to the account structures before she passed, legal modifications to the service agreements." Marcus's expression shifted, a flicker of concern crossing his features. "What kind of modifications?" "She assigned me as the primary account representative. It's all here signed, notarized, filed with legal 2 weeks before she died." I placed the folder on his desk, watching his face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally, rage. "That's impossible. She didn't have the authority." "Actually, she did. Section 12 of our client service agreements allows the primary representative to designate a successor in case of extended absence or medical leave. Victoria was nothing if not thorough." He snatched the folder, scanning the documents with increasing desperation. I could see him calculating, trying to find a loophole, a way to claw back control of $3 million in annual contracts. "This won't hold up," he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. "You can't just walk away with our clients." "I'm not walking away with anything," I replied, standing up. "I'm being eliminated, remember? But these clients chose to work with Victoria because she understood their needs. She made sure they'd continue receiving that same level of service." The beauty of it was that everything was completely legal. Victoria had spent 20 years in this industry. She knew every clause, every provision, every protective measure built into our contracts, and she'd used them all. Marcus's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You planned this, you and Victoria." "We followed company protocol to the letter," I interrupted. "Every form filed, every signature obtained, every waiting period observed. If you have concerns, I suggest you discuss them with legal." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Marcus, you'll still get that transfer document by end of day. It will list every client, exactly as requested. Of course, it will also show their current status and representation assignments. Transparency is so important, don't you think?" His silence followed me out of the office, heavy with the realization that he'd just lost the very thing he'd been so eager to steal. 6 months earlier, Victoria Cross had asked me to stay late on a Thursday evening. It was 7:45 p.m. when I knocked on her office door, finding her staring out at the city lights, a glass of whiskey untouched on her desk. "Close the door, Elena," she said without turning around. "And you might want to pour yourself a drink. The good stuff is in the bottom drawer." I'd worked with Victoria for 5 years, but we'd never shared a drink before. The boundary between mentor and protege had always been carefully maintained. Something in her voice that night told me the rules were changing. "I have cancer," she said simply, finally turning to face me. "Pancreatic, stage 4. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe 8 if I'm lucky." The words hit me like a physical blow. Victoria was the only woman on the executive team, the only one who'd ever fought for me, who'd seen my potential when everyone else saw just another support role to fill. "Victoria, Don't," she held up a hand. "I didn't ask you here for sympathy. I asked you here because we have work to do, and not much time to do it." She pulled out a folder thick with documents, spreading them across her desk like battle plans. "Do you know why you haven't been promoted? Elena, your numbers are exceptional. Your client retention rate is 94%. You've brought in more revenue than half the senior managers combined." I knew the answer, but I let her say it. "Because you don't have the right anatomy or the right last name. Because you didn't go to Harvard with Marcus's fraternity brothers. Because in their minds, you're exactly where you belong, supporting the real players." She picked up a client list, running her finger down the names. "The Steinberg Group alone is worth $800,000 annually. Morrison Industries, $1.2 million. The Catalyst Fund, another $1 million. These clients don't care about golf handicaps or bourbon preferences. They care about results, and you've delivered those consistently. What are you suggesting?" Victoria smiled then, and for the first time since I'd known her, it had an edge to it. "I'm suggesting we use the system against itself. Every contract I manage has a succession clause. I fought to include it years ago, back when I thought I was protecting the company's interests. Turns out, I was protecting mine and now yours." She explained the plan methodically. We would begin transitioning her key accounts to me gradually, under the guise of her medical treatments. I would attend client meetings as her support, but in reality, I'd be building direct relationships. "But Marcus will never approve." "Marcus doesn't need to approve. The succession clause gives me sole discretion in designating my replacement for existing contracts. It's already in the agreements. All we need is proper documentation and the client's consent." Over the next 3 months, we orchestrated the transition with surgical precision. Client dinners where Victoria would gracefully defer to my expertise. Conference calls where she'd have to step out for medical appointments, leaving me to lead, slowly, deliberately. The clients began to see me not as Victoria's assistant, but as their primary contact. "Elena understands our portfolio better than anyone," Victoria told David Steinberg during what would be our last lunch together. "If anything happens to me, you'll be in excellent hands." The documentation was meticulous, Every form triple-checked by Victoria's personal attorney, not the company's legal team. Every client signature obtained during routine contract reviews. Everything dated, notarized, and filed in accordance with corporate policy. "They'll fight this," I told her one evening as she signed the last transfer authorization. She'd lost 30 pounds by then, her designer suits hanging loose on her shrinking frame. "Let them," she replied. "I've been fighting them for 20 years, watching them promote mediocre men while telling me to be patient. My time would come. Well, my time ran out, but yours hasn't." She taught me about more than just contracts during those months. She showed me her network, the investors who owed her favors, the journalists who remembered when she'd given them exclusive stories, the former employees who'd gone on to bigger things but never forgot her kindness. Richard Blackstone at Venture Partners, I introduced him to his first major client, Sarah Martinez at the Tribune. I fed her the story that made her career. They're good people, Elena. When the time comes, they'll remember. The last time I saw Victoria in the office, she could barely stand. But she insisted on walking to Marcus's office to file her medical leave paperwork personally. "He's already measuring my office for his golf trophies," she said with bitter amusement. "He has no idea what's coming." 2 weeks later, she was gone. The funeral was a study in corporate hypocrisy, Marcus delivering a eulogy about losing a valued team member, while already calculating how to divide her territory among his chosen few. But Victoria had one final card to play. Her personal attorney called me the day after the funeral. "Ms. Cross wanted me to give you this after the service," he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a note in Victoria's handwriting. They never learned the first rule of war: never underestimate an opponent with nothing left to lose. The drive contains everything you need for Phase 2. Make them remember our names. The art of playing invisible while holding all the cards requires a particular kind of discipline. For 3 months, I perfected it. To everyone at Northbridge, I was just Elena Victoria's loyal assistant, the one handling the overwhelming logistics while our leader fought cancer. I arrived at 7:30 a.m. sharp, left at 6 p.m., and maintained the perfect image of a dedicated but unremarkable employee. "Poor Elena," I heard Bryce Patterson say during a coffee break. "Victoria's really dumping everything on her. She looks exhausted." If only he knew that my exhaustion came from flying to Chicago at 5 a.m. to have breakfast with the Steinberg group, then racing back for a 2 p.m. meeting where I'd sit quietly taking notes while Marcus pontificated about strategic vision. The real work happened in the shadows. Conference calls scheduled during lunch hours, when the office was empty, client dinners disguised as Victoria's treatment consultations in my calendar, an entire parallel business relationship growing stronger while the official one appeared to weaken. "How's Victoria really doing?" David Steinberg asked during one of our casual coffee meetings. We were sitting in his private club, a place where Marcus would have killed to be invited. "She's fighting," I said carefully. "But she wanted me to assure you that your portfolio remains our absolute priority." David studied me over his cup. "She speaks very highly of you. Elena, says you understand our risk tolerance better than anyone she's worked with." "Victoria's too kind." "No," he said firmly. "She's too smart to give false praise. That's why when she suggested formally transitioning our account to you, I didn't hesitate." The documents were already in my briefcase, prepared by Victoria's attorney, clean, legal, unassailable. David's signature joined 12 others already secured. Back at the office, I maintained my facade perfectly. When Marcus demanded updates, I provided detailed reports on Victoria's accounts, carefully omitting the crucial fact that they were no longer technically hers. "The Morrison Industries renewal is coming up," he mentioned during a department meeting. "We'll need to handle that delicately, given the circumstances." "I've already had preliminary discussions with their CFO," I offered quietly. "They're prepared to renew for another 2 years. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "You've been talking to Morrison directly?" "Only to maintain continuity while Victoria's been ill," I said, keeping my voice deferential. "She insisted we couldn't let her absence affect service quality." "Good initiative," he said dismissively, already calculating the commission. "Keep me posted on the renewal terms." What he didn't know was that Jennifer Morrison had already signed the renewal with my name as the primary representative. Not Northbridge's. The contract was sitting in my personal attorney's office, waiting. The trickiest part was managing the suspicious colleagues. Barbara from accounting noticed the unusual travel expenses. "You're flying a lot for someone in your position," she observed, flipping through receipts. "Victoria needs me to maintain face-to-face relationships while she can't travel," I explained. "You know how she values personal touch." Tom from legal was harder to deflect. "These contract modifications keep coming through," he said, cornering me near the printer at 4:20 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Succession clauses being activated. What's going on?" "Victoria's being thorough," I replied. "She wants to ensure smooth transitions if her treatment requires extended absence. But these all name you specifically." I gave him my best worried subordinate look. "I know, it's a lot of pressure, but who else knows these accounts well enough? Would you prefer Marcus handle the Catalyst Fund?" Tom actually shuddered. Marcus had nearly destroyed a $500,000 relationship his first week by trying to strong-arm better terms. Good point. The closest call came when Marcus's assistant, Patricia, stumbled onto something she shouldn't have. I'd forgotten to close my laptop during lunch, and she saw an email from David Steinberg addressed to me as account lead. "Interesting email," she said when I returned. I met her eyes steadily. "David's been very understanding about the transition period. He knows I'm just holding things together temporarily." Patricia had worked here for 15 years. She'd seen countless women passed over, pushed out, or relegated to support roles. Something in her expression shifted. "Of course," she said finally. "Temporary. I must have misread it." Later, she stopped by my desk. "Victoria was the only executive who ever remembered my birthday," she said quietly. "Every year, without fail." She paused. "If you need any documents from Marcus's office scheduling conflicts, you understand, just let me know." The network Victoria had mentioned wasn't just external. There were allies inside too. People who'd been waiting for someone to challenge the system. By the time Victoria passed, I held signed transfers for every major account she'd managed. $3 million in annual revenue, all legally bound to me personally. Not to my position at Northbridge. The company would still get their percentage if they kept me. If not, the contracts allowed me to take the clients elsewhere. I stored copies in 3 locations: my attorney's office, a safety deposit box, and Victoria's attorney's files. The originals stayed with me, in a briefcase that never left my sight. The evening before Victoria's memorial service, I stood in her empty office. They hadn't cleared it yet, her awards still lined the shelves, her jasmine perfume still faint in the air. "It's done," I whispered to the space she'd inhabited. "Every contract, every client, every signature, they just don't know it yet." On her desk, someone had left the program for her memorial service. They'd listed her as senior manager instead of director. One final insult to her legacy. I picked up her pen, the Mont Blanc she'd used to sign $100 million deals, and crossed out senior manager. In its place, I wrote architect of change. They'd understand soon enough. The day after Victoria's funeral, the vultures descended. Marcus called an emergency meeting at 8 a.m. sharp. The entire leadership team was there, 5 men in identical dark suits, circling the conference table like sharks who'd scented blood in the water. "We need to move quickly on redistributing Victoria's portfolio," Marcus announced, pulling up a spreadsheet on the projector. "I've taken the liberty of creating preliminary assignments." I sat in the corner with my laptop, ostensibly there to provide support documentation. They'd gotten so used to me being furniture that they didn't even lower their voices. "Morrison Industries should go to Brad," Marcus said, highlighting the row. "He's got the right background for manufacturing clients." Brad, who'd never worked a day in manufacturing but had gone to Yale with Morrison's CEO's son. "I'll take Steinberg," Tom declared. "Financial services are my specialty." Tom, whose last financial services client had fired us after he'd confused basic terminology during a presentation. They carved up Victoria's legacy like a Thanksgiving turkey, each claiming pieces based on nothing more than greed and proximity to power. Not one of them asked about the client's preferences or existing relationships. "Elena," Marcus finally acknowledged me, "we'll need you to create transition briefs for each account. Include all correspondence, meeting notes, and strategic plans from the past 2 years." "Of course, that," I replied, fingers flying across my keyboard. I was creating the document he'd requested exactly as he'd requested. Every client, every contract value, every renewal date. And in the current status column, I typed the truth they hadn't bothered to investigate. Account Representative Elena Grant, per executed succession clause. At 11:15 a.m., the CEO himself appeared. Robert Thornton rarely descended from the executive floor, but $3 million in revenue apparently warranted his attention. "Gentlemen," he said, pointedly not looking at me, "I trust we're handling this transition smoothly. These clients cannot experience any service disruption." "Absolutely," Marcus assured him. "Elena's been compiling all the documentation. We'll have everything reassigned by end of day." "Good." Thornton's gaze swept the room. "Victoria's death is unfortunate, but it's also an opportunity to modernize these relationships. Our clients need to see strong, stable leadership going forward." I almost laughed. These men couldn't spell stability if their bonuses depended on it, which, ironically, they did. After the meeting, I returned to my desk and began my real work. First, I sent the completed transition document to Marcus, copying legal and HR. Then I drafted my resignation letter, effective immediately. But before I could submit it, Patricia appeared at my desk. "Marcus wants the original client contracts from Victoria's office," she said loudly. Then, quieter, "He's planning to call each client personally this afternoon. Thought you should know." I pulled out my phone and sent a group text to the 12 primary clients. "Regarding your Northbridge representation, please remember all modifications to your service agreements require your written consent. Official documentation to follow." Within minutes, my phone buzzed with responses. Jennifer Morrison was the most direct. "Nobody touches my account structure without my approval. You're my representative, period." At 2:30 p.m., I submitted my resignation electronically, then printed a copy and walked to HR. Susan, the HR director, read it twice, her face growing paler with each pass. "Elena, this is unexpected. Can we discuss a transition period? 2 weeks' notice is standard." "My employment is at will," I reminded her. "And given that my position has been eliminated, per this morning's conversation with Marcus, I see no benefit in prolonging the arrangement." "But the accounts are documented in the transition report I provided. All client relationships have been properly assigned per the executed succession clauses in their contracts." Susan's phone began ringing. Then Marcus's line lit up, then another, and another. I could hear raised voices from the executive conference room down the hall. "Excuse me," Susan said, practically running toward the chaos. I packed my desk methodically. 7 years fit into one banker's box my diplomas, a few personal items, the fountain pen Victoria had given me last Christmas. Everything else belonged to the company. Marcus appeared as I was putting on my coat, his face contorted with rage. "You can't do this. Those are our clients." "They're your clients if they choose to be," I said calmly. "I've provided all documentation about their current representation. What they decide to do now is entirely their choice." "This is theft, corporate espionage. We'll sue you into oblivion." "For what? Following the succession clauses that Northbridge itself created? For documenting everything transparently? For resigning from an eliminated position?" I picked up my box. "Your own legal department approved every one of these contracts. Marcus." His phone rang Thornton's extension. He answered, his face cycling through expressions as he listened. "Yes, sir, I understand, but yes, sir." He hung up and stared at me. "Steinberg just called Thornton directly. He says if anyone other than you contacts him about his account, he's pulling his entire portfolio. That's his prerogative." Morrison Industries sent a formal letter stating the same thing. So did Catalyst. "Smart clients," I observed. "They understand the value of consistency." The elevator arrived, and I stepped inside. As the doors began to close, Marcus made one last desperate attempt. "We'll match whatever you're asking, double your salary, senior management position, corner office." The doors were almost closed when I replied, "I'm not asking for anything. Marcus, I'm taking what was already given to me by someone who actually understood what leadership means." The last thing I saw was his face, twisted with the realization that for once, the system had worked against him. That evening, I sat in my apartment with incorporation papers spread across my dining table. Grant Strategic Consulting would open for business Monday morning, with $3 million in confirmed contracts and a roster of clients who'd chosen me not because of my title or my office, but because of my work. My phone buzzed with a text from David Steinberg. "Congratulations on your new venture. Victoria would be proud." She would be more than proud. I thought, she'd be vindicated. The assault began at 6:45 a.m. on my first official day of business. 27 emails, all from Northbridge's legal department, each more threatening than the last. Cease and desist. Breach of fiduciary duty. Tortious interference with business relationships. They'd even invented some creative new threats. Violation of implied covenant of good faith was particularly imaginative. By 9 a.m., the phone calls started. Marcus, trying to sound reasonable. "Elena, let's discuss this like professionals. There's no need for lawyers to get involved." Then Thornton himself, abandoning pretense. "You have 24 hours to return those contracts, or we'll destroy you. You'll never work in this industry again." I recorded every call, documented every threat. My attorney, Lauren Price, one of Victoria's recommended contacts, had warned me this would happen. "They'll try to bury you in legal fees," she'd said. "Make you spend so much defending yourself that you can't actually run your business. It's their favorite tactic." But Victoria had prepared for this, too. The flash drive she'd left contained more than just client information. It held 7 years of meticulously documented corporate misconduct. Every time they'd violated labor laws, every instance of discrimination, every SEC filing that didn't quite match reality. Mutually assured destruction, Lauren called it. They can't go nuclear without exposing themselves to worse. The real damage came from their market manipulation. By noon, rumors were spreading through industry channels. Elena Grant stole proprietary information. She violated non-compete agreements. She's being investigated for fraud. My phone rang. Jennifer Morrison. "Elena, I'm getting some concerning calls about you," she said carefully. My stomach clenched. "Jennifer, I can explain." "No need. Marcus Hale just offered me a 40% discount if I return to Northbridge immediately." 40%. Elena, do you know what that tells me? That they're desperate. That they're terrified. If you were really a rogue employee who'd stolen contracts, they'd be confident the law would handle it. This scorched earth campaign means they know they can't win legally. Relief flooded through me. "So you're staying?" "Of course I'm staying. But Elena, not everyone will see through this. You need to fight back." She was right. 2 smaller clients had already called with concerns. The Anderson Group was wavering, and Pinnacle Partners had requested a meeting to reassess our arrangement. I spent the afternoon in crisis mode, personal calls to every client, explaining the situation without disparaging Northbridge maintaining the high road, even as they carpet-bombed my reputation. Most stood firm, but doubt was creeping in at the edges. At 4 p.m., Patricia texted me from her personal phone. "They're planning something bigger. Marcus has been on calls with someone named Walker all day. Be careful." Walker. I knew that name. James Walker, the industry's most notorious consultant. He specialized in competitive intelligence, which was a polite way of saying corporate sabotage. That evening, I found out what they'd hired him for. A flood of negative reviews appeared on every platform: Google, Yelp, industry forums, all posted within the same hour, all using similar language about unprofessional conduct and questionable ethics. Then came the deepfake, a manipulated video that appeared to show me bad-mouthing clients at an industry event. It was sophisticated enough to fool a casual viewer, posted on an anonymous account but somehow already circulating in professional networks. "This is criminal," Lauren said when I called her. "We can prove it's fake, but that takes time." Time I didn't have. Pinnacle Partners canceled our meeting. The Anderson Group sent a formal notice of contract review. I sat in my empty office at 9 p.m., staring at my laptop screen. $3 million in contracts was becoming 2.5, might become 2 by morning. They were bleeding me out. Death by 1,000 digital cuts. My phone buzzed an unknown number. "Ms. Grant, this is Sarah Martinez from the Tribune. I understand you used to work with Victoria Cross." The journalist Victoria had mentioned. I held my breath. "I've been receiving some interesting information about you," Sarah continued. Anonymous sources claiming various improprieties. But here's the thing, I received almost identical claims about Victoria 2 years ago, right after she landed the Morrison account. Same language, same tactics, same anonymous sources. What are you saying? I'm saying someone at Northbridge has a playbook for destroying women who threaten their monopoly. I'm also saying Victoria once gave me the story that made my career, and I don't forget my debts. If you're willing to go on record, I'd like to write about what's really happening here. I thought about the risks. Taking this public would escalate everything, but playing defense was killing me slowly. I'll do it, I said. But I want to show you something first. Can you meet tonight? An hour later, Sarah sat across from me in a 24-hour diner, scrolling through the files on Victoria's flash drive. Her eyes widened with each document. This is systematic discrimination. Securities fraud. Jesus, is this wage data real? Every document is authenticated. Victoria spent years collecting it. Sarah looked up at me. This isn't just about your contracts. This is about a pattern of corporate abuse going back a decade. Victoria called it Phase 2, I said. She knew they'd attack me. She wanted to make sure I had ammunition to fight back. This is more than ammunition, Sarah said, already typing notes into her phone. This is a nuclear weapon. When do you want to launch it? I thought about Marcus's smug face, Thornton's threats, the army of lawyers trying to crush me. Give me 48 hours to shore up my remaining clients, I said. Then burn it all down. Sarah smiled the kind of smile that made powerful men nervous. Victoria was right about you. You're not just fighting for contracts. You're finishing what she started. As I drove home, my phone lit up with another threatening email from Northbridge's legal team. This time, I smiled as I archived it. They thought they were hunting me. They had no idea they were walking into Victoria's trap. The folder Victoria had labeled Phase 2 contained more than evidence it contained an army. Richard Blackstone called me at 7 a.m. sharp, 2 days after my meeting with Sarah. Elena, I heard you've started your own firm. Victoria mentioned you might need support. Richard ran one of the largest venture capital firms in the city. His name on my client list would silence half the doubters instantly. I'm facing some headwinds, I admitted. I know exactly what you're facing. Marcus Hale called me yesterday, warning me about your questionable ethics. Funny thing, he made the same call about Victoria 5 years ago when she wouldn't give his buddy preferential treatment on a deal. What did you tell him? That I don't take business advice from men who've never generated their own revenue. Then I hung up and called my network. You have a meeting with 3 potential clients tomorrow at 10 a.m. Real clients, not favors. Companies that need someone who actually understands strategic consulting. The network Victoria had cultivated wasn't just helping, it was mobilizing. Every person she'd mentored, assisted, or defended over 20 years was suddenly reaching out. Margaret Zhao, now CEO of a biotech startup, called that afternoon. Victoria helped me when Northbridge tried to steal my research during my exit negotiation. I have $1 million consulting contract with your name on it if you want it. James Fitzgerald, a former Northbridge employee who'd been pushed out for reporting harassment, offered his services pro bono. I'm at Goldman now. Let me make some calls about your credibility. Marcus Hale versus Goldman Sachs isn't even a fair fight. But the most unexpected call came from inside Northbridge itself. Don't say my name, the voice said when I answered an unknown number at 11 p.m. I'm calling from a burner phone. This is Barbara from accounting. I stayed silent, listening. Victoria wasn't the only one keeping records. I've been documenting financial irregularities for 3 years, off-the-books payments, hidden losses, executive bonuses that don't match reported earnings. I heard what they're doing to you. Why are you telling me this? Because I have a daughter. She's brilliant, top of her class at Wharton. She wants to go into consulting. What kind of world am I leaving her if I let them keep doing this? It's dangerous for you to get involved. Victoria took risks for all of us. Every woman in that company has a story about Victoria standing up for them, fighting for their raises, protecting them from harassment. We couldn't save her, but maybe we can save her legacy. Barbara agreed to meet with Lauren, my attorney, to properly document everything. With whistleblower protections, she could provide evidence while maintaining her safety. The next morning, my meeting with Richard's referrals went better than expected. 2 signed immediately, a combined value of $700,000 annually. The third wanted to see how the Northbridge situation resolved. I respect your caution, I told him. But understand, I'm not hiding from this fight. By next week, everyone will know exactly what happened. That afternoon, Patricia texted again, emergency board meeting called for tomorrow. Thornton looks panicked. They'd gotten wind of something. Maybe Sarah's investigation. Maybe the SEC finally noticing discrepancies Barbara had been reporting anonymously for months. At 6 p.m., an unexpected visitor appeared at my office, David Steinberg. I wanted to deliver this personally, he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter on Steinberg Group letterhead, co-signed by 14 other clients. We, the undersigned, affirm our complete confidence in Elena Grant and Grant Strategic Consulting. Any attempt to impugn Ms. Grant's reputation is an attack on our judgment as business leaders. We will respond to such attacks accordingly. The signatures read like a Fortune 500 directory. Morrison Industries, Catalyst Fund, Blackstone Ventures. Even the 2 smaller clients who'd wavered had signed. We're also establishing a legal defense fund, David continued. $2 million to start. You shouldn't have to fight alone when you're fighting for all of us. I couldn't speak for a moment. David, I don't know what to say. Victoria did. She called me 2 weeks before she died. Said if anything happened to her contracts, we should protect you like we'd protect her. That you were the future she wouldn't live to see. That evening, I sat with Lauren and Sarah in my conference room, a small space. Nothing like Northbridge's glass towers, but it was mine. The story runs tomorrow morning, Sarah said. Front page. Digital edition goes live at 5 a.m. I've got corroboration from 7 sources, plus the documents. My editor says it's the biggest corporate scandal we've covered in a decade. Barbara's evidence has been submitted to the SEC and the Department of Labor, Lauren added. They're opening formal investigations. Northbridge won't be attacking anyone once they're defending themselves on multiple fronts. There's more, Sarah said, pulling out her tablet. After my editor approved the story, I got 12 more calls. Former employees, clients who were mistreated, vendors who were strong-armed. Victoria wasn't the only one they destroyed, she was just the latest. I thought about Victoria in those final weeks, methodically preparing not just my salvation, but her revenge. She'd known they would come after me, just as they'd come after her and countless others, but this time, she'd made sure I wouldn't fight alone. They think power is about who you can destroy, I said, looking at the letter from the clients. Victoria knew it's about who you can lift up. My phone buzzed Marcus Hale calling for the 10th time today. This time, I answered. Elena, please, we can work this out. The board is willing to discuss terms. The only terms I'm interested in are the ones in my client contracts, I interrupted. The ones that guarantee my clients the right to choose their representation. You don't understand what you're doing. You're destroying everything. No, Marcus, I'm revealing everything. There's a difference. I hung up and looked at my 2 allies. Tomorrow, everything changes. Sarah raised her coffee cup. To Victoria Cross, who played the long game. To Victoria, we echoed. Outside, the city lights sparkled, indifferent to the corporate empire about to crumble. But in this small office, 3 women sat planning the demolition, armed with nothing but truth and the network of one woman who'd refused to let them win even in death. The Tribune article went live at 5 a.m. exactly. By 5:15, my phone was exploding. Sarah hadn't just written a story she'd crafted a surgical strike. The headline alone was devastating. Inside Northbridge Strategies, a decade of discrimination, fraud, and the woman who died exposing it all. The article led with Victoria's story, but quickly expanded into a systematic takedown. Wage theft affecting hundreds of employees. Discriminatory promotion practices backed by statistical analysis. SEC violations that Barbara's documents proved went straight to the C-suite. But the masterstroke was the sidebar, a full list of every client who'd signed the letter supporting me, effectively announcing to the market that Northbridge's biggest revenue sources stood with the whistleblower, not the company. At 7:30 a.m., I met with Lauren and a man I'd never seen before, tall, gray-haired, with the kind of presence that made boardrooms nervous. This is Michael Crawford, Lauren introduced, senior investigator with the SEC's Enforcement Division. Crawford slid a document across the table. Ms. Grant, we've been investigating Northbridge for 6 months based on anonymous tips. Your attorney has provided evidence that accelerates our timeline considerably. We need you to testify. When? Now, today, before they can destroy any more documents. I looked at Lauren, who nodded. You're protected under whistleblower statutes. They can't touch you. They're already trying to destroy me. Crawford's expression hardened. After this morning's article, they have bigger problems. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division just opened their own investigation based on the interstate fraud allegations. The Department of Labor is sending a team this afternoon. Northbridge is about to be very busy. While I spent the morning in a federal building providing testimony, Northbridge was imploding. Patricia, who'd handed in her resignation that morning, kept me updated via text. Trading suspended at 9:45 a.m., down 42% before the halt. Emergency board meeting. Thornton seen leaving with boxes. Marcus locked in his office with 5 lawyers. FBI just arrived with warrant. They're seizing computers. At 2 p.m., I emerged from the federal building to find a crowd of reporters. Sarah had given me a heads up, but seeing them was still surreal. Ms. Grant, did Victoria Cross know about the fraud? Was this revenge or justice? What's your response to Northbridge's claim that you orchestrated this? I stopped, thinking of Victoria, of all the women who'd been silenced before her. Victoria Cross knew that sunlight is the best disinfectant, I said clearly. She spent her final months ensuring that light would finally shine on Northbridge's practices. This isn't about revenge, it's about accountability. What about your clients? Another reporter called. My clients chose integrity over intimidation. They'll continue receiving the excellent service they deserve, just from a company that actually values ethics. Back at my office, I found an unexpected gathering. Margaret Zhao was there, along with James Fitzgerald and 6 other members of Victoria's network. They'd brought champagne and Chinese takeout. The old boys' network has had centuries to perfect their system, Margaret said, raising a glass. Victoria gave us something better, a network based on merit, not malice. Speaking of which, James added, I have 4 more clients interested in your services. Turns out, standing up to corruption is good for business. My phone rang. David Steinberg. Turn on CNBC, he said simply. The breaking news banner read, Northbridge Strategies CEO Robert Thornton resigns amid federal investigation. The anchor was interviewing a corporate governance expert. This is unprecedented. We're seeing a complete collapse of leadership at a major consulting firm, triggered by what appears to be systematic fraud and discrimination exposed by a single whistleblower. Not single, I said to the screen. Never single. Barbara called next, from a secure line. I just finished 8 hours with federal investigators. Gave them everything 7 years of cooked books. They said it's the most comprehensive internal documentation they've ever seen. Are you safe? Safer than I've been in years. My lawyer says I'm looking at a substantial whistleblower reward when this is over, enough to put my daughter through business school without loans. As evening fell, Lauren arrived with more news. The board just announced they're placing Northbridge under emergency restructuring. They're bringing in an outside firm to clean house. Let me guess, they want to buy out my contracts to stop the bleeding. Actually, no. They want to hire you as a consultant to help retain the clients. They're offering 5 times your previous salary. I laughed, really laughed for the first time in weeks. They want me to come back and save them. Apparently, you're the only one the clients trust. Tell them I'm busy. I have a company to run. That night, I stood in Victoria's favorite restaurant, the one where she'd taken me after my first big win. Her widower, Robert, had invited me. She knew she wouldn't see this day, he said, sliding a small box across the table. But she wanted you to have this when it came. Inside was Victoria's Mont Blanc pen and a note in her handwriting. Elena. They'll call you vindictive, opportunistic, ruthless. Let them, while they're busy naming you, you'll be busy building something they could never imagine, a future where talent matters more than anatomy, where merit beats membership, where the best person actually wins. Don't just beat them, replace them. All my love and rage. Victoria. I held the pen, feeling its weight. Tomorrow, there would be more battles, lawsuits to defend against, a business to build, systems to change. But tonight, I sat in Victoria's chair, at her table, holding her pen, surrounded by the network she'd built and the empire she'd helped topple. The waiter approached. "Ms. Grant, there's a call for you at the bar." It was Marcus Hale. "Congratulations," he said, his voice hollow. "You won." "No, Marcus, we won. Every woman you passed over, pushed out, or punished for being better than you, Victoria just made sure we finally got to fight back." Silence, then. "The FBI wants me to testify against Thornton. They say it might keep me out of prison." "Then I suggest you tell the truth, for once." I hung up and returned to the table, where Robert was smiling sadly. "She would have loved this," he said. "She did love this," I corrected. "She orchestrated every moment of it." 3 weeks after the FBI raids, Northbridge's interim CEO called me personally. "Ms. Grant, Amanda Richards said they'd brought in a woman to clean up the mess." Naturally. "I need to be frank. We're hemorrhaging clients. The ones tied to you are the only stable revenue we have left." "I'm aware. We're prepared to offer you something unprecedented. Full partnership, your own division, complete autonomy over your clients. Name your terms." I leaned back in my new office chair, looking out at the skyline from my own building smaller than Northbridge's tower. But mine? My terms are simple. I want nothing to do with Northbridge, ever again. "Elena, please, hundreds of jobs are at stake. Not the executives, the regular employees who had nothing to do with this." She had a point. Barbara had mentioned the anxiety among the support staff, the accountants and analysts who'd just been trying to make a living. "Here's my only offer," I said. "I'll consult on transition strategies for the innocent employees, help them find placement at other firms, pro bono. But I won't save Northbridge. Some institutions don't deserve salvation." 2 days later, Marcus Hale was arrested at his country club. The photo of him in handcuffs made every major newspaper. Thornton had already fled to a non-extradition country, abandoning his co-conspirators to face justice alone. The trials would take years, but the verdicts were swift in the court of public opinion. Northbridge became a cautionary tale taught in business schools, a symbol of everything wrong with corporate culture. Meanwhile, Grant's strategic consulting grew. Not explosively, I wasn't interested in building another empire, but steadily, thoughtfully, with every hire carefully chosen for talent and integrity rather than pedigree. 6 months later, on the anniversary of Victoria's death, I held our first company meeting. 12 employees, 7 of them women, 5 people of color, all brilliant, all previously overlooked by firms like Northbridge. "We're not just building a company," I told them. "We're proving a point, that you can succeed without sacrificing your soul, that diversity isn't a buzzword, it's a strategic advantage, that the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, but making them irrelevant." After the meeting, I found a package on my desk with no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a single line for Phase 3V. The drive contained contact information for every woman who'd ever filed a complaint at a Fortune 500 company and been silenced. Hundreds of names, each a potential ally, client, or employee. Victoria had planned even further than I'd imagined. A year later, standing before Congress to testify about corporate governance reform, I wore Victoria's Mont Blanc pen clipped to my jacket like a badge of honor. "Ms. Grant," the senator asked, "do you believe what happened at Northbridge was an isolated incident?" "No, Senator. Northbridge was just the one that got caught. Victoria Cross made sure of that. But there are hundreds of Northbridges out there, firms built on exploitation and exclusion. The question is whether we'll keep letting them operate in the shadows." "And what do you propose?" "Sunshine, accountability, and consequences, real consequences, not golden parachutes and slap-on-the-wrist fines. Victoria Cross died exposing one corrupt institution. We owe it to her and to everyone else who's been silenced to expose the rest." The reform bill passed 6 months later. They called it the Cross Act, though Victoria would have hated the attention. Today, my company occupies 3 floors of a building in the financial district. We have 52 employees and manage $800 million in client contracts. Every conference room is named after a woman who fought the system and won. The largest one, of course, is the Victoria Cross Strategic Center. Marcus Hale is serving 7 to 10 years in federal prison. Thornton died of a heart attack in Dubai, alone and disgraced. The other executives either fled, flipped, or faced justice. But I don't think about them much anymore. Instead, I think about the 22-year-old woman who interviewed yesterday. Brilliant and ambitious, with the same fire Victoria saw in me, I hired her on the spot. The corporate world can be brutal, I warned her, especially for women like us. I know, she said. That's why I want to work for someone who fought back and won. This morning, I stood in my office, Victoria's pen in hand. The city spread below me, my company thriving around me. 3 million in stolen contracts had become something so much more a revolution in slow motion, a restructuring of power that no board could vote down. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Morrison. Just saw the Forbes article. Grant Strategic, the consulting firm built on revenge and redemption. Victoria would be so proud. I smiled, remembering Victoria's last words to me in her office, weak from chemo, but eyes still blazing. They think power is about keeping others down. We know it's about lifting others up. Show them what happens when you give a smart woman nothing left to lose. I did more than show them. I buried them with their own weapons, built something better from the ashes, and proved that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's systematic change. The sun sets now through my office windows, painting the city gold. On my desk, 3 things never move Victoria's pen: her picture and the original contracts that started it all. They're not trophies, they're reminders. That silence can be a weapon, that patience can be power, and that sometimes, when the system is rigged against you, the only winning move is to build a better system. My name is Elena Grant. I held on to $3 million in contracts while an empire crumbled around me. And I'm just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and justice. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts on Elena's journey. What would you have done in her position? Your perspectives make these stories richer for our entire community.